Hey everyone, and welcome to my Deathwalker updated impressions look. So this is the final look at the cards that have been released now by Isaac. So this is the final set of cards. This is all of the changes that we're going to see with these characters now, and we've got an opportunity to look at them and to start dissecting them and pick apart these starting characters and decide on who we want to play and what kind of strategies are going to be strong and what kind of ability cards and level ups we're going to do. So here is my revised impressions. This kind of replaces my original video. If you've seen, I made that video during the original Kickstarter when there was a lot of limited information available and still a lot of changes and tweaks made to the characters, but we got a general sense of what they were about. Well, here we go. Now we're finally able to take a proper look at these characters and we can start to dissect them. So this is my first video on the Deathwalker, and I will be doing videos on every single starting class as well, just the same, so that yeah, hopefully you guys can go into Frosthaven informed on which character you would like to play. If you did find this information useful, please do toss me a like. You know the drill now, guys, and subscribe. It really helps me out so much in growing this channel, and I've got lots more Frosthaven stuff that I plan to release. Lots of Gloomhaven stuff already on the channel, and I do plan on doing some Jaws of the Lion content eventually when I manage to finish the game myself. I also stream regularly on Twitch at twitch.tv/mandatoryquest every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. So if you've got any questions about the characters or you want to talk about Frosthaven live, then come hang out on the channel and you can always catch me there and ask any questions you might have there. Okay, we've got a lot to get through, so let's just jump straight into it. Here is my updated impressions on the final Deathwalker cards and character. So the Deathwalker class in Frosthaven is one of the starting classes, and this character deals with shadow tokens and abilities that use these shadow tokens to attack, move, and do other fun and funky things. It's a 3-dot complexity character, which we're not really sure exactly what that means yet, but on the harder side, it's a more of a ranged character going off of the bars, a little bit of control, a little bit of mobility, not much in the support column though, not much in the defense column either. So this character's obviously got some good damage potential and some good control ability, but not much else. And kind of unsurprising, the elemental affinities is night, is dark, which could make sense thematically with this character caring about shadows. My initial reservation with this character when it was first showed off during the Kickstarter was that this shadow generation seemed to be quite slow and maybe cumbersome, and this character really needs these shadows on the board in order to be efficient, and I felt like perhaps that would be a bit too tricky to do. Also, it felt like the character was a bit more of a solo, bit of a loner, didn't feel like it fit very well in kind of like a team composition mechanic. Definitely felt like they were a little bit more on their own, doing their own kind of puzzle, didn't seem to really interact much with the other players or the other mercenaries. So let's see if that's changed. You can have up to 5 shadow tokens on the map. If you place a 6th, first remove any existing shadow. Try to keep some shadows on the map or your actions will be limited. Makes sense. If a shadow is removed during any part of an action, any subsequent attacks, moves, or abilities must be performed as if the shadow token were not there. Again, that kind of makes sense. It means that essentially you consume the shadow, you use it as part of an action. The hex a shadow is in is considered to be adjacent to the shadow for the purposes of targeting. That's just a little thing just to say that when one of the ability cards, when they refer to enemies being adjacent to the shadow, they could also just be on top of the shadow, and that's really what that is. Also, hexes with only shadows in them are still empty, which is important for the purposes of summoning and some other things, and shadows can't turn hexes into negative hexes, which is another important thing potentially for enemies or possibly for other things coming up into the game, I would think, in terms of monster focus, things like that. The character starts with 11 cards, which is a pretty decent hand size, not huge, but not the smallest we've seen either. Also only starts with 6 health, so that's quite low. That is definitely on the lower end in terms of starting health, but I don't think we really believed that this character was going to be doing too much tanking, but maybe we might be wrong, but I think that's pretty much in line with what we kind of expected. Okay, let's jump into the cards. Okay, so I'm going to try and not take too long with all of these cards because we've got a lot to get through. So the first card is Call to the Abyss. Before you or one of your summons performs an attack, you may place a character token on the target of the attack. When that enemy dies, place a shadow token in the hex in which it died. You may only have one such character token on an enemy at any given time. And this is a permanent ability, goes out in front of you, and it's a burn, of course. So All this does is essentially gives you now the option to be able to mark a target if you like, just before it dies, just as before you're about to do an attack. And then when it does die, either because of the attack you've just performed or by an ally maybe later on in the round or something like that, maybe you miss, right? But when it dies, you get that shadow token onto the board, and then you can return your character token back to you, so you can then do it again on a future turn for a different enemy. I really like this. I think this makes a lot of sense. The fact you can get summons to do it is quite nice, because maybe the summon can then mark it and then attack, and then potentially you could then, if it does kill it, then the token comes back to you, and then maybe you could kill something else and get another token out. I think that's really cool. So there's potential here to get 2 tokens out in a turn if you like, using this. Yeah, really, really strong. And I think this is great shadow generation. This is something that the character really needs. You really need some great generation of these shadow tokens, and this appears to be it. So really like the top of this. The bottom is place 1 shadow token in a hex within range 2. No burn, just nice and simple. This actually might be the better use of the card when you first start a scenario. When you first go into a scenario, all of the enemies are at full health. Chances are you're not going to kill it that round. So perhaps you actually use the bottom of this for the first few rounds of a scenario, potentially, until you kind of like long rest or whatever, and you can get it back, and maybe you go into the next room before you play the top. But I definitely think that the bottom is actually a way for you to make shadow tokens straight away, right out of the gate, and very, very simple. So I really like this. Some good generation on the bottom, some guaranteed generation on the bottom, and the top I think is very thematic and works well for your character to start doing some damage and attacking. So really, really like it. 82 initiative is obviously quite bad. However, usually these kind of top burn abilities and things like that end up on stuff like this, so this isn't too surprising. Next up, we have Anger of the Dead, which is attack 2, range 2, and then we can remove any number of shadow tokens within range 3 of yourself. For each shadow token removed, we get an additional +1 attack, +1 range, Pierce 1, and 1 XP. That's pretty crazy. You could actually get a lot of experience points from this. If we could remove, let's say, 2 or 3, you could get 3 experience points from this. That's pretty nuts. I don't know how quickly the generation is going to happen, obviously, at this point in time, but I can assume that we should be able to comfortably either make a shadow token per round or something to that effect. We should be able to make these tokens. So this is quite good. And in fact, pairing it with the bottom of this is not too bad. We can immediately get some value with Call to the Abyss. The 14 initiative means it actually pairs pretty nicely with the bottom of Call to the Abyss, I would say. So we can go early, we can place our shadow token in a hex within range 2, then we can immediately jump across and we can do this damage as well. So consume it and do some damage right away out of the gate. So I think this is pretty good. The Pierce is also surprisingly good here. This is a really powerful attack. If you could do an attack 3 or 4 with Pierce 2, Pierce 3, I mean, this is pretty crazy. Yeah, very, very strong attack, especially with the range. I mean, the fact that the range is increased too. I mean, I haven't played with this at all, but this to me screams like our best attack. I mean, this is an incredible attack, really, really good. But obviously it's going to hinge very much on how efficient you are with these shadow tokens. But man, this is a very, very, very strong attack. The bottom of the card is target all enemies occupying a hex with wound, target all enemies occupying a hex with a shadow token. Nice and easy. You will probably, you know, try and find the opportunity to play this. The top is so strong though, so I'm going to struggle to play anything other than the top of this, I think, but we'll see. I quite like the bottom of this, but the top is such a strong attack. I am going to struggle to play it for anything other than the top, that's for sure. Next up, we have Sunless Apparition, Summon Shadow Beasts. This is a summon. This is a 1 health, 3 move, and 3 attack. Now that 1 health is obviously terrible, but 3 move, 3 attack is excellent as a level 1 summon. This is going to hit, and to be honest, in my opinion, most summons that have 2 or 3 health, they're going to die to 1 hit anyway, most of the time. So all this does is it tells you that it's going to die to definitely to 1 hit, or maybe to some splash damage. That, you know, if you had a Cragheart style effect going on, there are ways that this thing might just die. But I think this is a super powerful summon. Move 3, attack 3. If you can protect it a little bit, absolutely. This ability can only be performed if you remove 1 shadow from an adjacent hex. Okay, so in order to summon this, you're going to have to consume a shadow, or you have to remove a shadow, sorry. And that's you know, a real downside. That is actually like something you have to set up. However, you can, quite easily set that up with the bottom of this, place this right next to you, then immediately summon. So there are ways you can still do it in a single turn, but it does mean that you kind of have to give up potentially your entire turn to summon. But that's not unfamiliar sort of territory for a lot of summons. Quite often you find yourself going late, playing a summon and just maybe using a bottom move too, or something like that. So it's not uncommon for this kind of to take basically a whole turn away from you anyway when you go to do a summon, so it's quite nice. You get 1 experience points, and this is actually a non-burn summon. So this is a reoccurring summon that you can get, and that is insane if you ask me. 3 move, 3 attack, and it's reoccurring. You can bring it back. That's just, yeah, really, really good. And in combination with the top of this could potentially start spreading your shadows. I'm already enjoying this character a lot more looking at it than I was previously. This seems like a really, really strong summon, really strong ability, and a key piece to keeping this character kind of moving and going. So really like it. The bottom is a loot 1 and then teleport to a hex with a shadow. Some great movement potentially if you've got a shadow really far away, so this could be pretty good. The loot 1, I'm not a huge fan of loot cards, but they're a necessity in the game, no doubt about it. I wonder if we get any more loot cards, but this is nice to at least pair it with something else. It's interesting that we can't teleport then do the loot. I wonder why it's that way around, but either way I think that's fine. But I really, really like this summon. Next up we have Fluid Knight, which is an attack 5. Perform the attack as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow token, then remove the shadow token. It generates Dark Element and it's 1 XP. Really, really strong. It means that you can basically do a melee attack, but you don't actually have to be within melee range. I guess thematically it's like you're disappearing into the shadows and then you're appearing just for a brief second from your shadow token to attack the enemy, then you're kind of disappearing again and the shadow is removed. I think thematically that's like really, really smart, really, really cool. And yeah, I think an attack 5 is really good. So very strong card here. Really, really like this. And it generates dark, which is nice. And we haven't seen anything that consumes dark yet, but I think it's probably fair to say we're going to get some. The 24 initiative as well means that it's quite early. It's not as early as it could be, but that's a good initiative for this kind of attack. On the bottom, we've got on the next damage we suffer, you may teleport to a hex with a shadow, remove the shadow, and suffer no damage instead. So essentially, this allows us to almost do a little bit of pseudo tanking. It's kind of like a weird tanking effect, right? We can maybe get ourselves right to the front, can kind of reach for an enemy, which is nice. It means that necessarily we don't have to worry about our positioning quite as much. We can reach to get into a position to go and attack an enemy. Then we would receive the damage, or we would take some damage, and what we'll do is we kind of like just disappear, and we disappear onto a shadow. So obviously there has to be a shadow token for us to retreat to, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that shadow that we retreat to is in a better position than what we were, but we do get to negate that damage, and I quite like that. It's 1 XP, you can do it once, and once it's done, it goes into your discard. So yeah, quite a nice card here. I really like this card in general. I think this is going to be like a role player type card for you. I think the top, I mean, I've always been about damage. I love damage. That's what I do. So I'm really excited about the top here. I think this is a very good damage attack, but the bomb has some situational use, which could be kind of interesting. Next up, we have Dark Fog, which is an attack 3, range 3 with curse. Interesting. I didn't think we were going to see too much cursing. It's also a 3 hex AoE. I didn't think we were going to see this kind of thing too much. It creates dark, but it is a burn. Okay, so there's the balancing, right? Maybe in normal Gloomhaven we wouldn't see this effect on it if it wasn't a burn. Like this kind of has turned it into a burn, I think. You know, if you want to add curse to this kind of effect now, I think it needs to be a burn. That's absolutely fine. I think it's a pretty decent attack. If we compare this to something like Net Shooter, for example, level 1 Gloomhaven card for the Tinkerer, that is a, same pattern, same amount of damage, immobilize instead of curse, and that is a burn too. And I think this is pretty, this is on par. So in terms of a burn level 1 attack, this is up there. This is pretty much on curve with what we've experienced before. 46 initiative is middle of the road, so nothing to write home about there. Not brilliant. And the bomb is move 1 shadow token up to I'm not sure what that is, but doesn't have anything yet. Up to something hexes. Not sure what that's supposed to say there, but there's some sort of typo there. But move one shadow up to 5 hexes. Just basically move some shadows around. I think that this is a fairly decent effect. I do get the feeling though that if we spend maybe too long moving the shadows around, then perhaps we're wasting turns. I'm not too sure on that. That's one thing I didn't really like about it. I didn't like the fact initially that we would maybe have to spend a lot of time doing this kind of admin of moving them around, right? Kind of like when you have summons and you have to kind of go, right, I'm going to take a turn to move my summons because they're so slow. And I never really like those kinds of turns because they're like, you know, devoid of action. Like there's no action there. It's just I'm setting up, guys, and you kind of just go boop boop and then you're done. So I'm not sure how great this is going to be. This is a good burn attack though, so I absolutely recommend this. So potentially this is good enough for us to use in the interim until we get a perfect time to use this, because this is pretty strong. Next up we have Black Barrage, which is an attack 2 range 4. That's a lot of range. That's a really decent ranged attack, and we can consume dark. Nice. So here's our first consume to get +1 attack, +1 range, and 1 XP. Now that is this is going to definitely be one of your kind of your role player early attacks. I can tell already. Just being able to attack for 3 at range 5, just at level 1, that's really good. Getting an XP every time you do it as well, that's also very good. So I can see Black Barrage being easily one of your starting cards, easily a card that you're going to lean on quite a lot to do damage early on, and 28 initiative here as well. So decent-ish initiative. So yeah, Black Barrage is a very good top effect. Really like it. Bottom is move all shadow tokens up to hexes, up to 2 hexes. Same kind of typo again. So basically move all of the shadows around. Again, I don't really know how I feel about those yet. Perhaps they will be good, perhaps they won't be good, but we will wait and see. I'll reserve judgment on the moving of them. It feels like maybe it might be a necessary thing to do, certainly for the Anger of the Dead, right? So this is a hugely powerful top, so potentially this could it would be worth moving them if you can get multiple more shadows for this. So perhaps in combination with Anger of the Dead, it will become like a really big deal. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that being able to consume the dark is going to be very easy here, and I really like this top. So yeah, great card. Next we have Call of Doom, which is 1 attack, target all adjacent enemies, consume dark to add muddle to the attack, which is nice. Perform the attack as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow. So this is really like the crux of this card, and this is why I think this is okay. This isn't great. Never been a fan of attack 1s because attack 1s just really do not scale very well, and also at level 1 with that base modifier deck, attacking something for 1 just feels like such a crapshoot, you know. You're just hoping that you draw something, so it needs to have something else going on that makes it worth it, even if you miss, right? And is muddle really worth it? I don't know. Sometimes not. So I think this is a pretty weak attack. The fact you don't get any experience points for doing it as well feels a bit rubbish. At least you don't consume a shadow token in the process of doing this, so there's that. But certainly the top of the of Black Barrage was a much better use of this dark as a consume. So we'll see. We have multiple ways to consume dark, so perhaps not. The bottom of this is move 3 with an enhancement dot, nice, and consume dark. Well, there you go. We're playing the bottom of this. Pretty sure that we're going to play the bottom of this. Whenever you see this kind of effect in Gloomhaven, I would bite somebody's hand off. Just being able to move and create our relevant element is brilliant. Hands down, amazing. So yeah, okay. Call of Doom, we're playing the bottom. This is definitely where this character's at. And yeah, this is just not powerful enough, I don't think, but this is absolutely great and will set you up for future turn. Next we have Eclipse. Place 3 shadow tokens in hexes within range 3 and create dark. This is just a burn as well. So this is just a straight up, just do it, burn, done. This is quite a nice way to just kind of like, as soon as you enter a room, right, and you just really want to hit the ground running, just play Eclipse. Just straight away, there's your 3 shadow tokens. Next turn, you're off to the races, right? You can start to really do some stuff with it. Whether or not the value, though, of this is a burn, I mean, it is a burn. It gets no XP either. It does create dark, which is interesting, but wow, it just... I don't know. I don't know if the value of a burn for 3 shadow tokens like in one hit is worth it. It definitely feels like we can just make 1, right? We can make 1 very easily on a single turn. So with Call to the Abyss, that's not very difficult at all to do. So it's going to be interesting to see the value of that. The bottom of this is move 4. That's a good amount of movement. So perhaps we just keep this in our hand and use it as a move 4 rather than actually using it for the top when we first enter a room. 86 initiative is pretty bad as well. Not really great. But this kind of effect, I think you probably do want to go late with this because you want to see where all the enemies kind of end up, and then you can maybe move and place them down and then go early the next turn, right? Consume that dark and maybe start using those shadow tokens that you've just placed. So actually, I think that the late initiative could be in the favor of this kind of effect. So yeah, Eclipse, not too sure about whether or not the value of this is good, but move 4 is always going to be strong. Next up, we have Lingering Rot, which is an attack 3 on the top, target all adjacent enemies and poison. That could be a lot of enemies. Perform the attacks as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow token, then remove the shadow token. So this has a lot of potential to hit a lot of stuff, especially if you get a shadow token in the middle of a big group of enemies and there's an enemy on top of the shadow token and there's like 2 or 3 to the side of him. This could hit a lot of enemies. So for 2 XP and a burn, this is probably worth it. And in a certain situation, this is going to be nuts. Add a power potion to the mix. This could do a lot of damage. So Lingering Rot, this is a very strong top attack, I think. And this is going to be like your kind of, your tide turning, type card. We've seen them before with other characters where you just have these amazing like turns where you just blow up a load of enemies and you target lots and lots of things. Lingering Rot to me feels like that card for this character. So I'm always behind these kind of all-in cards where just chuck all of your resources at it, chuck all of your potions, chuck all of your items, just buff everything up and just try and do as much damage in a single attack. So yeah, I love these types of cards and these types of effects. So Lingering Rot, I think that's really good. The bottom here is move 3 and then poison range 1. Interesting. It's interesting that they've put the range 1 there rather than adjacent. I'm guessing that this is something else. Well, they've got adjacent here. I'm not quite sure what that means, but presumably range 1 just means next to them. Like heal 1 used to be just next to you. So it's just adjacent, right? So you can just poison something that is range 1 of you. I think that's fairly good. And that is definitely an effect that you will probably use over the course of a scenario while you're waiting for the perfect time to use Lingering Rot. So I really like this card. 64 initiative is obviously a bit difficult for this. I think ideally with the Lingering Rot top, you want to go early and you want to make sure that you can really just maximize it. So you're going to have to pair this this card with something else with an earlier initiative, I think, just to ensure that it really works. Next up, we have Shadow Step, which is move 3. This movement must end in a hex with a shadow. I mean, that's a pretty significant drawback, but I'm guessing not for this character. Makes a lot of sense. To have move on the top is always a really good effect. It's always good to see move on the top half of a card. So I presume that you're going to be able to make this work pretty well for you. And then attack 3. So as long as you're on that shadow, you can move, end your turn on that shadow, and then do an attack 3. 19 initiative 2, so that's nice. It means you can do that nice and early. The bottom is 6 movement. Place 1 shadow token in the hex you occupy, and then burn. So you move 6, then you place the shadow token, and it's a burn. It's kind of nice to sometimes have just a big movement card, in your cards rotation, just as a possibility. Certain scenarios will really call for you. They're more of an endurance test sometimes. They're asking you to, can you survive for this long, or can you get from A to B, without dying? So sometimes you really need a lot of movement in a pinch, and this does that for you. So yeah, I like this. This is clearly quite a strong card, I think. You can decline the top move to just do an attack 3 as well, melee attack, which is interesting. So there's always that. So you can just turn this into an attack 3 melee on the top anyway. So yeah, I quite like it. 19 initiative as well. That's going to be important, I think. Next, we have Strength of the Abyss, which is attack X plus 1, where X is the number of shadow tokens on the map. So this does not care about range. This is just how many are out. That could be pretty good. It's just an attack 1 if you have no shadow tokens on the map, but let's face it, you're not going to be using it when you have none on the map. So I quite like this. I think this is fine. This also means you don't have to worry so much about your positioning, right? You can just walk up to something and hit it without worrying too much about where the shadow tokens are or where you are. You can just kind of go up to an enemy and hit them and get some damage buffs for having those tokens around and on the map. So this could be, I mean, I'm not really sure how many tokens. I know it's maximum 5, but realistically, how many tokens will we have on the board? Or are we going to be consuming them and making them at kind of like an equal rate? I'm not too sure yet. So it's very difficult for me to say, oh, is this going to be an attack 6 because we're going to have all 5 tokens out, or is this going to be more like an attack 2 plus 1, so more like an attack 3 or an attack 4? And I feel like that's probably where it's going to end up being. It's probably going to end up being like an attack 3 or 4, not an attack 6. 50 initiative, bang in the middle, so not good, not bad. Oh, and this is an ability. So this is a burn ability that you get forever for the rest of the scenario. So once during each of your moves or attack abilities, you may remove a shadow token within range 3 to gain an experience point and add +2 to your move ability or +2 to one of your attacks. Wow, that seems really good. That seems really good, but also kind of maybe counterintuitive slightly to some of the other strategies. I'm wondering if this is like a card meant for a slightly different build, or this is like a very, very unique build, because this to me is a very much like a build around me style effect, right? This is shouting and screaming at you, hey, this is the way you want to play, right? Don't worry so much maybe about consuming the shadows, or sorry, using the shadows as part of an effect. We're just going to be removing them this way, and we're going to be getting loads of extra value. Maybe you can play this in conjunction with the other things. I don't know yet. I haven't got enough experience with the character, but this looks really strong. Really, really strong. The +2 to your moves is also sneaky good. Really sneaky good. Wow. Yeah, +2 to your attacks. Yeah, this is very good. I like the top though as well, so I don't know. This is a very interesting card. Not sure where it's going to end up lying, but it's a powerful bottom effect for sure. Really, really powerful. So whether or not this ends up the main kind of build that you end up going with this character, I don't know, but this just, yeah, this looks great. Next, we have Wave of Anguish. For each shadow token on the map at the start of this action, perform an attack 3. Perform each attack as if you were occupying the hex with a shadow. This is pretty crazy, right? So what this is saying is that for every shadow token you have out, so let's say you had 5 shadow tokens out, you're going to be performing 5 attack 3s, and you can choose from which shadow you would like to do these attacks. That's bonkers. That could be a huge amount of damage if you kind of plan it right. It's definitely a bit magical Christmas land. Definitely feels like, yeah, if we can do this, we can do that. It does feel a little bit, you know, ooh. You know, it's got my kind of like combo player senses tingling. It feels like, oh yes, we can break this. This is going to be great. But it's also, you know, is it ever going to really transpire? Or is this going to be some kind of, you know, standard kind of like attack 3, maybe target 3, you know, attack 3 times, which is still very strong, by the way. That's still very, very good. This 11 card hand that this character is having is starting to look too small. It's really starting to look too small to me already, because there's some good burns here that we could use. 58 initiative, nothing crazy, nothing to write home about. The bottom is move 2, move all shadow tokens up to 1 hex. So that seems pretty good. I do like the fact though that you can do a little move 2 and get some value out of this. So I like that. Sometimes you're just going to want to move 2, right? Sometimes you just need to move 2, and this gives you a move 2 and a little something else to do at the same time, which helps your character out. So I'm a fan of this, and I hope to see more of this kind of thing where you have these kind of smaller incremental actions and they kind of do something, because nobody really likes to use the default attack 2 or move 2s, but some characters are forced into it at times. So I like to have this kind of effect more often, where actually you can do something kind of cool at the same time. Forceful Spirits, this is an attack 2, target 2, range 2. With Consume Dark, get an additional +1 attack and an experience point. So this could be attack 3, range 2. That's decent. That's very decent for level 1. That's on par with some unlockable characters, I would say, not necessarily on par with starting characters. The range 2 is a little bit hard, I think. That does mean that you might struggle to get the target 2 because the range 2 is so small, but there's a good chance you can do it, and I think it's worth trying to do. So yeah, Forceful Spirits, I like this. If it was just an attack 2, you know, target 2, range 2, that's still pretty good. I think that's still fine. It's playable. So yeah, Forceful Spirits. This is a decent attack top. 34 initiative, not bad, not great either. And the bottom is teleport to a hex with a shadow token or adjacent to a shadow token. Interesting. So this gives you a few more possibilities for your movement. You don't necessarily have to go specifically onto that shadow. You have some more options. So I like this. I think this is a very strong movement ability. Again, reminds me very much of a certain unlockable character. Won't say who, no spoilers here for Gloomhaven, but this reminds me very much of them, and that was a very usable ability back then. So I imagine that this is also going to be a very usable ability. So Forceful Spirits, a nice card all round. Rest in Shade. Heal 2, target all allies occupying hexes with shadow tokens and self, and generate dark. Not a burn, you can play this multiple times. This is a nice little heal effect. Like, the character has, you know, been said to not really be a support heavy character, but this is okay. A little heal here or there to remove things like poison, wound. I think it's good. You have some ways to play some bottom cards with this to move the shadows first. So because you have effects that move through the shadows on the bottom of your card, you could move them into a decent position to then allow this to kind of do some more healing, right? Which I quite like. So yeah, it's a usable heal. Nothing crazy so far. Probably one of the weaker cards that we've seen so far for this character, I would say, but usable in certain situations. And yeah, I think one of the most important things, you know, that I'm taking away from this character already, we haven't really seen many bad cards. When you're reviewing Gloomhaven cards for level 1 characters, unlockable or just the starting any characters really, there's often some chaff. There's often some cards that you're just like, I have no idea why you would ever take this. And I haven't really seen any yet for this character. So that's a good sign, I think, for Frosthaven going forwards. The bottom here is move all shadow tokens up to 6 hexes, and it is a burn. That to me feels like a burn effect, because that basically says arrange your shadow tokens exactly how you want them. And that's basically what that says. 26 initiative 2 could be quite good, and again, you could move them into a nice way and then pair that with a top and go crazy and maybe do a really big attack. So you can use this once you've got all 5 of your tokens out, if that's really a thing, and then you can straight away just use Anger of the Dead, right? You could easily use the bottom of that card and this to set yourself up for some huge big XP granting turn, damage turn. I mean, it's just nuts, right? Some really good potential there. Whether or not I would play it all the time, I don't know. I think obviously this is a big burn, and this character with only 12 cards and all these burns, something's got to give, right? So this is the end of the level 1 cards, guys. So if you are worried about spoilers from level 2 onwards, now is the time to turn off the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. But we will now be going on to the level 2 cards. So if that is something you want to save for yourself for Frosthaven, then yeah. But for me, this is still open information. Any kind of card information that we get for starting classes is open information. It's not usually typically considered to be spoiler information. And I kind of encourage players to at least look through some of the higher level cards when choosing a character anyway, to give you a general sense of, is this a character for me, right? Because it might look really good at level 1, but perhaps it just ends up doing the same thing for all the way up to level 9. Nothing really changes and nothing really excites you as you level up. So there's always that to consider. So the first card we have at level 2 is Restless Spirits. This is an attack 3 with Curse. If you are occupying a hex with a shadow token, you may remove it to add +3 attack and 1 XP. And this is a reoccurring curse attack. This is quite nice, especially if you can consume that shadow token to get 6, and you can teleport around, move into these shadows quite comfortably. So I don't think this is much of a stretch, to be honest, to get this extra attack. So this could be amazing. 6 damage and a curse, 1 XP, and it's not a burn. Sign me up. I'm all over this. This seems incredibly strong to me. Doesn't seem particularly hard to set up either, considering all of the cards that we have. 20 initiative too, so we can probably do it early before things get too crazy on the board. Excellent, really, really good. The bottom of this is move 1 shadow token up to 4 hexes. Seems reasonable enough to me. Another easy way to move things around. 4 hexes is a lot of movement. If the moved shadow token is in the same hex as an enemy, the enemy then suffers 3 damage, remove the shadow token, and gain 1 XP. Wow. Okay. This card is an absolute slam dunk. This card is amazing. You've got an incredibly strong attack on the top. 6 damage with curse potentially. That's just incredibly strong. But not only that, but you have some direct damage on the bottom here that can go through shields, finish off those annoying enemies that you just can't seem to kill. I mean, that's just amazing. Goes through shield, goes through retaliate. Yeah, this is, wow. I don't know what our other card's going to be, but this card is insane in my opinion. This is really, really good. I would absolutely do this effect or this effect. It's both halves of this card are nuts. So I'm all in on Restless Spirits here. So I don't know what the other card's going to be, but it's got a lot to live up to because this is just, this is crazy good. So the other card is Deepening Despair, which is attack 4. Target 1 enemy at any range adjacent to at least 2 shadow tokens and create dark. Interesting. So this allows you to, well, you can get crazy amounts of range with this, I guess. But this is not attack 6 or curse. It is 11 initiative though, and it does create dark. So you've got that going, but this to me does not seem as good as the other level 2, at least the top. It's a little bit more set up, so you're going to have to probably play a bottom card with it to be able to move them. It's not bad by any means, being able to attack for a huge amount of range potentially, and also not have to get yourself into danger, right? But this does not seem as good as the other card. 11 initiative does not save that, and neither does the create dark. So, yeah, interesting. So far, not sold so much on Deepening Despair. It's not a bad attack by any means, but I think the other one is slam dunk the pick so far. The bottom of this is you and all allies may treat each hex with a shadow token as being adjacent to each other hex with a shadow token during move abilities this round. Interesting. And then we get to move 3. So what this allows you to do is everybody can basically make use of the shadow, which is really interesting. So people can move an incredibly large distance, an incredibly long distance in a single turn with this. This could be very, very useful in scenarios where like you have to get from A to B, right? You have to get to the end of a scenario as quick as possible, and you have some slow characters in your party. Summons can use this too because it says you and all allies. Interesting. I wonder how that works with monster focus. I guess they would use it, right? Because it's the path of the quickest route. It is the quickest route. That's going to be something that needs to be FAQ'd. It is a burn though, and it's only a round, nothing more. I think this is a tough sell. Compared to the other card, this is a tough sell. Let's be honest. Restless Spirits has an amazing top and an amazing bottom, and Deepening Despair has a good top, and it has a situationally good bottom, in my opinion. 11 initiative is good, but you don't want to be wasting a card pick just for initiative, right? There has to be something else going for the card too. And this is so good. I'm going to be taking Restless Spirits every time at level 2 until I try this and see otherwise, but this to me just seems incredible. Really, really good. Level 3, we have Deadbolt. Attack 3, range 4. That's a huge amount of range, really good. We can consume Dark to add Curse and get 1 XP. It's, really good. Another way that we can curse. So interesting. We knew that curses were going to be rebalanced. They're not going to be as prevalent anymore. And just cursing 1 enemy per round feels kind of fair. So far, doesn't feel like we're doing anything too broken. We had that 1 burn that was a 3 hex AoE with curses, but doesn't feel like we're really stacking curses in a really obnoxious way so far. So yeah, looks pretty good to me. The consume dark to add the curse, very easy to do. 1 XP, full range means you're always going to be able to hit something. This is very solid, very, very solid. And I really like the top kind of consume dark to add a curse as well. Ooh, 88 initiative though. Wow, what a stinker. We don't like that. Not with an attack, at least, anyway. This is not the kind of initiative you want to pair with an attack, especially one where you want to maybe get a curse in so that the enemy has the potential to draw that curse that round. So yeah, that's a stinky initiative for this kind of attack. The bottom though is move all shadow tokens up to 3 hexes. Now that could be very useful because it's move all tokens. And similarly to how we had that burn that moved them 6, that was a bit awkward, right? Having to burn a card to move them 6. 6 is a huge amount of movement, but that's a lot of resources to sink into doing that. This, though, is not a burn, and it's probably going to work much more in your favor and gives you that easy setup now for that very, very strong Anger of the Dead attack. And because it's got 14 initiative, you could just play 14 as your leading initiative and make this work. I think the top is good. The initiative is stinky, but this could be paired with an early initiative, a different early initiative, and it actually could work quite well for you. So we'll see. The other level 3 is Ritual Sacrifice. Attack 3, add +1 attack for each shadow token in or adjacent to the hex occupied by the target. That seems like pretty reasonable to me. So if we can attack something for 4 or 5 with this, that's great. Neither of these 2 cards have had an attack that's better than our level 2 attack, I'll say that much. So yeah, this feels okay. Nothing amazing, but certainly plays into the synergy and easy enough to do, I think. 13 initiative though, this is very nice. We'll take a 13 initiative any day of the week. The bottom is remove any number of shadow tokens within range 3. For each shadow token removed, gain 1 XP and grant 1 ally or self shield 1. Okay, so I didn't think this character could do any tanking, but apparently I was wrong. Apparently I was very wrong. This feels really quite good. Being able to remove any number of them just seems strong to me. Like, just incredibly strong, right? You could maybe shield up 3 or 4. That seems quite good. 13 initiative as well, so that you do it when it matters. You can do it before enemies take their turn. And it moves to and creates dark as well. So what this allows you to do is potentially for you to be the tank, right? You can grant all of the shield to yourself. Then you can move into a position where you're actually the focus, and then you create dark for your next turn. That just feels like a really nice, coherent kind of turn. That feels nice. That will definitely feel nice. Now, I like this card so far. I think that this could be a decent, solid attack for you over time, and this is situationally quite nice. And the fact that you can grant an ally or yourself as well, I think that's really nice. That gives you some kind of like, either you can do the tanking or you can just let somebody else do the tanking. Feels like there might be some combo potential if like an ally has a lot of retaliate or something they can stack, right? This feels good. This feels like this might pair well with another character. So I'm not sure exactly which card I would take. I am leaning towards Deadbolt here, just because I feel like the bottom of this card is probably going to be such a role player for you. It's hard at the moment without playing the character a lot to understand how relevant these shadow tokens are going to be and how much we're going to need to move around, and are they going to be in the right place at the right time. And this just has some just inherent synergy with some of our cards we already have, that I feel like it might put it over the edge. And the top is a decent attack too, and something you can definitely easily chuck into your rotation if you needed to or if you wanted to. I feel like Ritual Sacrifice, the top is a okay attack. It's not amazing. Could end up being like an attack 6, which is decent, of course. And the bottom though is a really fun kind of like tanking ability. This has me excited though to maybe try some kind of weird build. This definitely has that feeling to it. So yeah, so this could be interesting. Which way you go with it, I guess it's going to be up to you, but I have a feeling that I am leaning slightly towards Deadbolt because the bottom of this is just going to be more useful in helping our character tick At level 4, we have Fleeting Dusk. This is an attack 3, target all adjacent enemies and wound. Nice, that's very strong. Perform the attacks as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow token. So this is the way that you can use these shadow tokens to great effect, potentially wound a lot of people and attack for 3. This is similar to that poison one we saw earlier, except it's wound instead of poison. 1 XP and it is a burn, and that's kind of to be expected because again, this has potential to be a lot of enemies targeted with this. Huge potential for that. 36 initiative is nothing crazy, and the bottom is place 1 shadow token in an adjacent hex. Now that to me feels a little bit underwhelming maybe at level 4, the fact that it's taken until level 4 for us to get another ability that is just straight place without it being a burn, right? You know, we've seen that ability before. We got one at level 1, but this is the first time we've seen it. Now, is that going to be good or not? I don't know. I feel like the problem is you want either Fleeting Dusk or you want the other card, which was, let's go back. So it was Lingering Rot. Lingering Rot was that card. And to me, it feels like Lingering Rot top attack is just as good, except for the fact that it removes the shadow token rather than keeps it there. But to me, Lingering Rot, a top attack, seems just as good. And we do already have an ability that allows us to place, which is Call to the Abyss. So it feels like an amalgamation of these two cards. Is that worthwhile having? I don't really know, but to me, maybe it's not going to be good enough for us. So perhaps Fleeting Dusk is going to end up being just not powerful enough for a level 4 for us. So let's see what the other level 4 is. So the other level 4 card we have is Pulled Across, which is Bane. Target 1 normal or elite enemy occupying a hex with a shadow token. Now, Bane is a new effect that is basically replacing the kind of kill effects that we saw in Gloomhaven, because they were always a little bit too strong or a little bit too awkward. But what Bane is that the enemy will suffer 10 points of damage at the end of their next turn. So this allows them to actually take a turn, and then they're going to take the 10 damage. So maybe they'll die at the end of their turn. Super powerful effect. Is it as good as killing? Obviously not. Could be fairly good though, and used against potentially bosses or something like that if you can target things that aren't normal or elites. This particular card though says target 1 normal or elite, so you wouldn't be able to use it on a boss. I was never a huge fan of the non-reoccurring kill effects in standard Gloomhaven, unless you really had nothing better to choose from. So I would probably be avoiding this effect personally, unless you can reoccur it. And because we can't reoccur it here, it is a burn, then to be honest, I think it's probably not really worth it. Let's hope the bottom's good though. The bottom is 2 movement, Invisible Self, and then Create Dark. Invisibility, very strong. Even with the changes to the invisibility rules, I still feel like invisibility can be very strong, so this is good. Whether or not invisibility will be as good as it was, I don't think so. I think the nerfs are a significant nerf to invisibility, so we're not now just instantly picking any ability that has invisible on it anymore. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So between these two cards, this I think is maybe a bit of a miss. Bit of a swing and a miss here at level 4, huh? I'm not too jazzed about either of these two cards. I think potentially you end up taking Pulled Across because, you know, you've got a top here that can be used to good effect. You know, you burn it, sure, but you're quite happy to burn a card to do 10 damage at some point. So yeah, you'll take that. And the move to Invisible Self is still going to be useful, and you generate that dark, and move and create dark is always going to be good. So it might be Pulled Across just because of the bottom here with the situational top view to use towards the end of the scenario. I feel like this is just too similar to an effect we already have, and this is maybe just kind of like the card you take if you're struggling. I feel like this is like if you really struggle to get your shadow tokens out, maybe you should consider playing Fleeting Dusk. From these two cards, I think I'm probably taking Pulled Across. I would actually be tempted to maybe go back and take one of the earlier cards because I feel like some of them might even be better. I might even be tempted to go back and take like Ritual Sacrifice here because I think level 4 is a bit of a swing and a miss for me at least. On to level 5, we have Medium, which is an attack 3, Consume Dark to add +2 attack. If this attack kills a target, place 1 shadow token in a hex adjacent to the hex the killed enemy occupied. So a nice way for you to be able to generate shadow, potentially be able to generate more than one shadow if you had this out, as well as have the active effect of Call to the Abyss out, right? So potentially you could also put that on there. So when it dies, you place the shadow token there, and then you can place another shadow token adjacent to that one where you've just killed it. Really nice way for you to create shadow tokens quickly, but you do have to go out there and actually melee hit something, which might be tricky for this character. At the bottom, we have a burn here. At the start of each of your turns, move one shadow up to 3 hexes. Ooh, okay. And this is a permanent ability that you get for the rest of the scenario. It's burn 1 XP. Yeah, that seems really good, because this means now that you can just keep those shadows moving with you as you go throughout a scenario. You don't have to worry about, you make a load of shadows in the first room, then you try and move to the second room and you have shadows behind you and you have to play cards to move them. Now you're actually taking half of a turn every single turn, right? Because would you play a card on your turn to just move a shadow up to 3 hexes anywhere? And yeah, I think you probably would. So would you burn a card to be able to do that for free at the beginning of each of your turns? Absolutely. So this seems like a really, really strong effect to me. This could be the thing that makes this character really start to fly. This just being able to just constantly move these tokens around. The top though is a really nice attack. So ooh, this card, this is like Jeopardy, right? The top is really good. The bottom though, wow, this could be such a key piece to making this character work and tick, I think. Yeah, I love this card. This card's really cool. Actually has me excited to play this character a little bit, because this takes away some of that admin side of the game, you know, of you having to worry about taking a turn off just to move shadows. Now you can just keep moving the shadows with you, and it rewards smart planning for you to be able to plan, yes, I'm going to move that one, and then on the next turn I'm going to move that one, and then now they're all within the perfect range for me to be able to do my big attack, right, with Anger at the Dead. That's cool. Medium could just be the best card we've seen so far, I think, for this character in terms of helping them out. This is nuts. We do only have 11 cards though, so we'd have to be worried about burning. I don't think we can afford to burn loads of cards, so this is a damn good one. The other level 5 we have is Dominate, which is attack 6. Consume Dark to disarm. Now that is well worth it. Disarm, amazing effect. I'll take that any day of the week. Disarm is mostly as good as stun most of the time. 90% of the time it's as good as stun, so you'll take it. Sometimes it's even better than stun because you actually want the enemy to move. So yeah, really, really good. Perform the attack as if you were occupying the hex with a shadow, then remove the shadow. This is good. Really solid attack. Because you can do it from a shadow, means you don't have to be in danger, and also means that when they're disarmed, they will move. So very good, because they're not going to be adjacent to you necessarily. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. 1 XP, and you can play it multiple times. I'm in. Sign me up. This is good. Wow, level 5. Level 5. Oof, this is going to be tough for this character. The bottom is just move 4, create dark. Another like just, hey, you know, this really gets you going. This character feels very self-sufficient, I will say. Doesn't feel like they're struggling. They are slapping move and dark on cards left, right, and center, right? You're not going to struggle. So this is a tough decision. I mean, I've got to go with medium for this, right? I mean, you've got to go for medium for this, but I kind of hope that we have an opportunity to go back and take Dominate, because this is so strong. I think this could fundamentally just, you know, flip a switch on your character and you turn into an absolute monster. So we'll see. Level 6, we have the Night Takes Shape, Summon Shadow Horror. 5 health, 3 move, 3 attack, and it's a melee. This ability can only be performed if you remove 2 shadows from adjacent hexes. That's quite a big downside to summoning this. Having to remove 2 shadows from the board, that's, you know, for a character that might struggle to make them occasionally, or you're struggling, you know, you don't really want to give those up unless it's really worth it. All attacks targeting your summons gain disadvantage. Interesting. And that's just a permanent ability. Now, in terms of like the raw stats, move 3, attack 3, 5 health, fine. It's 2 XP. Oh, but it's a non-burn. Okay. It's a non-burn. See, if this was a burn, I would say this isn't worth it. But the fact that it's a non-burn, 2 XP, yeah, that's pretty cool. I like this summon. I do like it. All attacks targeting your summons gain disadvantage. Doesn't really matter so much for your other summon because the other summon only had 1 health. But hey, I suppose the enemy could miss. For this summon, that might actually mean that it can take 2, maybe 3 attacks, depending on what difficulty you play at. Interesting. I feel like this is pretty interesting. Not a bad summon, not a great summon. It would be awesome if this was ranged, but because it's melee, it is going to end up getting hit by something eventually, I expect. 94 initiative, pretty common for a summon to be that late. Move 1 shadow up to 3 hexes to an unoccupied hex. Teleport to the hex with the moved shadow, then remove the shadow and gain 1 XP. Then you get to perform an attack 3. Interesting. We can move a big amount of distance here, a large distance with this for sure, because that token can be anywhere. There's no range on that, right? So that's fine. You know, that shadow token could be really far in front of you. You can move it even further in front of you, and then you can teleport to that. But, you know, I guess ideally what you're trying to do here is to pop up next to an enemy because you really want to try and do that attack 3 on the bottom. An attack on the bottom should always, you know, your eyes should light up when you see that. You see an attack on the bottom or you see a move on the top, your eyes should immediately light up because that's like, okay, this allows us to upset the balance of the game, right? The game is fundamentally balanced around the concept of bottom is generally move, top is generally attack. So when you have them sort of switched like this, then that's like, hey, we've got an opportunity here to do something crazy like 2 attacks in a turn or 1 incredibly long movement in a turn, right? So you've got these tricks up your sleeve. The summon I think is okay, not incredible, but reoccurring 2 XP. I mean, I'll take it. Good for leveling. But this I think is sneaky good, quite good I think. The other level 6 card we have is Vengeful Storm, which is an attack 3, range 4. Remove any number of shadow tokens within range 3 of yourself. For each shadow token removed, add +1 target and 1 XP. That could be pretty good. Remove any number of shadow tokens within range 3 of yourself. For each shadow removed, you get an additional target and 1 XP. I like it. I actually quite like this because sometimes you just want to maybe kill off a couple of enemies, and the range 4 means that you're going to have a good opportunity to actually reach a couple of enemies here. But for a level 6 card, being able to maybe do an attack, maybe an attack 3, range 4, target 3, let's say, it's okay. It's not broken. It's not broken. It's probably just okay. Maybe it's slightly underwhelming for our level 6, but not bad by any means. And a lot of characters would absolutely take that. 18 initiative is very strong, which is good. This character seems to have a good bunch of early initiatives available to them, which is nice. Designate 1 shadow token, then wound and stun, targeting all enemies adjacent to the designated shadow token. But it's a burn, so you can only do this once. This is kind of nice though. Designate 1 shadow token. This could be a huge stun. This could be huge. And the wound's really nice too, because then they're going to take a damage on that stunned turn. So they take a wound damage on the turn they are stunned, and then they're going to take a wound damage the next turn. So it's guaranteed 2 damage. That's the way you should look at this kind of effect. If you can ever stun something that's wound, it basically guarantees 2 damage, because they're going to take 1 on the stun turn and they're going to do nothing. They can't remove it or do anything. They just do nothing. And then at the beginning of the next turn, they take another point of wound damage. So it's 2 guaranteed free damage. This is pretty strong. If you could stun 4 things with this, I think you're pretty happy. Wound 3 or 4 things with this, I think again you're really happy. The top is a strong attack, so potentially this is a decent role player type card. Essentially you just play the top a lot, and then when you really need to, you pull the bottom out. Burn stuns have traditionally not been great, I will say that. Generally speaking, reoccurring stuns is what's been broken with Gloomhaven. So this might not be strong enough, but I think adding the wound effect in there might be enough to sort of tip it over the edge and make it quite playable. So we'll see. I think you have a tough decision here at level 6, like which kind of card you want to go for. Either go for Vengeful Storm or potentially go for the Night Takes Shape. But I feel very, very tempted here to go back and take Dominate, because I feel like Dominate top is potentially as good as, you know, this bottom here. I mean, it's a stun, right? But Disarm is as good as a stun. If you're playing 2-player, I'd be very, very tempted to go back and take that. I'm very, very interested in Dominate. And the move 4, create an element as well on the bottom is just super good. This is tough. So not only now are we having tough decisions potentially on the actual, level that we are, but we also have some really nice cards to maybe think about going and taking back. I would probably personally, I'd probably be somewhere between either taking maybe Vengeful Storm and maybe Dominate here. I'm not generally a big summons guy. I feel like this is quite a big investment for you to get this summon out. This is a good effect though. This is a good effect, but the initiative is poopy. So yeah, maybe we end up going back and going for Dominate here. I don't know, but this to me just seems like a really solid card. So like, I'm happy to play the top or the bottom of this all day. This, I'm not very happy to always play the top. The bottom, I'm probably happy to, but maybe not always. And similarly with Vengeful Storm, I'm kind of happy to play the top of this, but not always. And the bottom, I want to play in the right time, right? I've got to have the right time. So for me, it's probably between Vengeful Storm and Dominate here at level 6. So at level 7, we have Proliferation of the Abyss, which is Consume Dark to place 1 shadow token in an adjacent hex. That's like the optional part. And then whenever you or an ally suffers damage while occupying or adjacent to a hex with a shadow, you may remove the shadow token, gain 1 XP, discard this card, and no damage is suffered instead. So what this does is essentially just saves somebody from taking some damage. Now, I've not really ever been very hot on these kinds of damage mitigation effects. It's nice that this does give you a shadow token potentially if you can consume the dark, which I think is absolutely what you want to do here. But these kinds of effects generally I've not been too hot on. I find them a bit passive. The fact that this is on the top of a card as well means that we're giving up an attack most likely to be able to actually do this. So I'm not really liking the top of this one, unfortunately. I think it's a little bit weak. It's interesting maybe for some tanking potential, but it's in my opinion, this is just a little bit of a weak effect. And not particularly interesting, and giving up too much of a strong action, which could be an attack in my opinion. 38 initiative is also not great for that kind of effect either, so you're going to need to pair it with something else. The bottom is move 2, Consume Dark to add +2 move, and you may move 2 shadow tokens up to 4 hexes. Now, the way that I'm starting to see this is that if we've actually gone and we've taken medium, so if we've taken medium and we have that effect that we can always move something every round, do we need to concentrate on these? We're going to end up with a lot of cards that move stuff around. Now, a move 4 with that ability tagged on is obviously very strong, but I feel like the top of this card is not great. The bottom of the card is okay. So let's see what the other level 7 card is, but I'm not really chomping at the bit on this one. We have Hungry Grasps. For up to 2 shadow tokens on the map at the start of this action, perform attack 3, range 2, pull 2. Perform each attack as if you were occupying the hex with the shadow token. So this is essentially 2 ranged attacks at range 2 from shadows, and then we pull the enemies into the shadow, which is like thematically awesome. Really cool name for a card as well, Hungry Grasps. I mean, absolutely describes the card really well. This is a really cool effect, especially if you're trying to set enemies up into favorable positions for you to be able to then do these big AoE attacks with the shadows, right? And you want lots of enemies adjacent to shadows. This has some really good potential. Also allows you to maybe set up like the bottom wound effect, right? Where enemies are wounded if they go into a shadow that round. That seems pretty cool to me. So yeah, I think the top of this is pretty thematic and really cool. However, it's not particularly strong necessarily like on the face of it, but it does have some setup potential which could make it quite good for us. So 25 initiative is decent. For each shadow token on the map at the start of this action, perform a heal to range 1 bless. Interesting. Perform the heal as if you were occupying the hex with the shadow. So this is a decent heal. It is a burn though. Wow, it's a burn. 2 XP. I never really gravitate towards big heal burns. I find them to just be a little bit too much. Like they just, you heal, and even if you heal a great amount, you just kind of end up, you get hit a couple of times, you end up back where you started. And that's why I feel a little bad. I don't mind heals that aren't burns incrementally. You heal over time. Maybe you have a couple of characters that can heal and you kind of get yourself back up to full, or in combination with a long rest or potions, right? I don't really like burning a card to heal a character a bunch unless it's really intrinsic to what you're doing. Although presumably we can add multiple blesses with this, which could be very strong. There's got some combo potential right there. I mean, it's for each shadow token on the map. So this could be 5 blesses. This could be, I guess, heal 10 with 5 blesses. That's pretty good. 5 blesses for 2 XP and a burn. Maybe that's good enough. I don't know. I mean, this obviously will work very, very well with certain characters. So I don't know. Possibly worth it. So what card do you get at level 7? Well, I don't really like Proliferation of the Abyss top, and I think that the bottom is fine, not bad, but it's certainly nothing crazy. Perhaps being able to move the 2 shadow tokens up to 4 hexes is going to be enough. It could well be enough. So maybe this is good enough. I'm not too sure. Could end up being that this is just a necessity for you, so you should always take this when you see it. But at the moment, without playing, I'm not entirely sure. I will say that Hungry Grasp's top seems like a pretty decent attack to me and can allow you to set up some of those cool AoEs or some of those abilities that really do care about enemies being adjacent. So that's quite nice. And the bottom feels like it could be crazy broken, right? If you manage to get all 5 of your shadow tokens out and then you can do that bless. That seems pretty strong to me. So yeah, I think I would probably take Hungry Grasps. Is probably where I'm at right now because I'm looking for an attack. But I could actually maybe see Proliferation just being the pick, just because this part of this action just is too good and too good to pass up. Level 8, we have Lashing Tendrils, which is you and all allies gain Retaliate to range 2 while occupying hexes with a shadow. And it's 2 XP, it's a permanent ability, and it is a burn. So wow, okay, this is a kind of interesting. Giving you and your allies permanent Retaliate. I mean, that's going to be good. Especially Retaliate 2 range 2 means that it's more likely that the Retaliate is actually going to trigger. One of the big problems with Retaliate is it's not great against ranged enemies, but with range 2 you could move within range 2 of them and then they wouldn't need to move away to stop themselves from getting disadvantage, so your Retaliate would actually happen. So this could be okay, but it's a burn. We've only got 11 cards. Feels rough. Feels very, very rough, and also doesn't really feel it feels like there's some sort of like tanking or damage mitigation sub theme going on with this character here. There's some tanking abilities and there's some weird stuff going on. Now I can see it, but I'm just not convinced it's going to be very good. So for me at the moment, I don't really think that this is the pick. Interesting, but yeah, not reliable enough, and it doesn't help us do damage, and it feels like we want to be focusing on ourselves a little bit more, unless of course we plan on being the tank, maybe. The bottom is move 2 shadow tokens up to 3 hexes. Boy, do we have a lot of move shadow tokens now. It does feel like the game has given us a lot of options to do this now. I don't know if that's because in playtesting they found that they were just annoying and then you never had them in the position that you wanted to, so they've just added lots of abilities that do that. I don't know, but it does feel like we're getting overloaded with this kind of ability, right? It just does definitely feel that way. If the moved shadow tokens are adjacent to the same enemy, the enemy suffers 3 damage, and you can consume dark to make it +2. Now that is good. Actually, that might be the thing that puts it over the edge as being very playable. Being able to do 5 direct damage to something by doing that, and you're kind of furthering your plan as well by moving the tokens. That's pretty strong. I like the bottom of this. I dislike the top, but I actually quite like the bottom of this. So I wonder what the other level 8 is going to be. So we have Frozen in Fear, which is immobilized, target all within range 1. Perform this ability as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow token. Now that straight up could be great control. that could be some really decent control. Immobilize is one of the weaker control elements because obviously it only works against melee enemies, doesn't work against sort of support style enemies that often heal or summon, do stuff like that. It doesn't really work against them or archers and ranged enemies. So, there's a subset of enemies that it works against and it works well against, but there's others that it doesn't. Then all enemies with Immobilize suffer 2 damage. You can consume Dark to do +1. Now that is good. That I like. We can immobilize them and we can do 3 damage. Excellent. I really like that actually, because you can use it as a control element, but also, do you know what? Just chuck it at an archer and just do 3 damage to an archer. Why not? Yeah, Frozen in Fear top, this is strong. This is really, really strong. I really like the idea of this, and we haven't had too many kind of AoE control abilities. We've had, Disarm come up. We've had a stun that was a big stun, but it was a burn. But this is potentially a reusable, smart piece of control at level 8, and it does damage at the same time. I'm all for this kind of thing. 21 initiative as well, very strong. The bottom is place 2 shadow tokens in adjacent hexes. Nice. Then move all the shadow tokens up to 5 hexes. So this is kind of like just better than the other one that we had, which was move all of them 6. This is better because we can place 2 fresh ones, which is really good. It is a burn though, 1 XP. This could be quite a good effect just as soon as you enter the dungeon. Boom, here's 2 shadow tokens, move them into the exact places that you want them, and then next turn, or well, even on the same turn, right, because this is a bottom action, on the same turn you can immediately start just going bang and bang bang and doing a big combo. This to me just screams being able to do a combo on the first turn. You use the bottom of Frozen in Fear with like the big poison one, right? It's an immediate turn 1 setup for Lingering Rot on an early initiative. The combo potential of that is very, very strong. So yes, it's burning 2 cards on the first turn, so you're going down to 9 cards. Maybe not the best move, but well, boy, it'll be fun and it'll look good. Between the 2 Lashing Tendrils and this, I do really like the bottom of Lashing Tendrils, but for me, Frozen in Fear has a very playable top and potentially a situationally fun bottom that looks like a bit of a combo piece to me. So it can allow you to blow up an entire room in a single turn. So, you can easily sell me on things like that. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So Frozen in Fear is going to be my pick, I think, at level 8. So the first of our level 9 cards, when your time comes, place a character token on an enemy within range 4. When the enemy dies, all enemies adjacent to it suffer 4 damage. Then you do an attack 2 range 4 curse create dark. Now that is a hell of a level 9, I think. Being able to potentially just do 4 pure damage to a lot of things. There are some characters like the Crackheart, for example. This absolutely feels a lot like the Crackheart's level 9, one of the Crackheart's level 9 cards, which I think was Brutal Momentum. That card was insanely good, essentially doing a very similar thing. This is actually a little bit worse than that. That was quite strong, but I still think this is very good. Also got some similarities to some of the unlockable characters in Gloomhaven. This kind of effect of when an enemy dies, something happens. So this, I think this is very strong. Suffering 4 damage, doing a 2 attack and a 4 curse. You don't even necessarily need to kill the enemy that turn as well, right? You place the character token on it, and then maybe an ally can kill it later on in the round, or maybe you can leave it alive until the perfect time to kill it. Gives you some flexibility. You don't need to do it there and then on that turn. Generate dark with the top as well, which is always good to have some free dark. So not a overwhelmingly amazing level 9 card by any means, but not a bad one either. And 4 pure damage, true damage is always going to be great. And I don't know if they've rebalanced that. It feels like this character's got a lot of access to true damage or pure damage, but you do have to jump through a lot of hoops. So we'll see. I don't know if they've rebalanced that in some way to try and either give more of it or maybe give less of it or make you work harder for it. I don't know, but you've had to work pretty hard for it up to now, but this is a very simple way of doing it. The bomb is whenever an enemy within range 2 dies, you may place 1 shadow token in the hex the enemy occupied, and that is a burn, 2 XP, and it's a permanent ability for you. Just, it happens, right? Now that seems quite nice, but actually I feel like that is almost a little bit lazy. The bottom of this card is like lazy level 9 card, right? It's like, hey, you've spent all of this time and all of these levels perfectly mastering when to place your shadow tokens, how to place your shadow tokens, moving them around. Well, do you know what? All of that goes out the window now because we'll just give you a burn card. That means you can make them whenever you want, right? So yeah, yes, for the power level, I think it's good. However, it kind of breaks the spirit of the character, for me at least, up to this point. It's a good job that the top, I think, is pretty strong. So you don't really need to necessarily play the bottom anyway. I think the top is very, very playable. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this effect because I think it's against the spirit of playing the character. I mean, then you're going to have all of these sort of like tokens that, well, I've got all of these cards that move tokens around, but I just keep generating new tokens every turn. Like, what do I need them for, right? So there's some anti-synergy there. I get that feeling. I still need to play the character though, so I can't completely comment on that, but that's my gut feeling when I see something like this. The other level 9 is Black Lance, which is move 3, attack 4. Good start. We like some movement on a top, and we've got some attack there. Remove any number of shadow tokens from hexes you entered with the move. For each shadow token removed, +3 attack, 1 XP. Wow. Now that's an assassination. Whoa. So that's just 7 damage, even if you just do 1. Yeah, this is good. This is very, very good. 16 initiative as well. There's still an XP on this card, presumably for battle goals. We're going to see returning battle goals that will require you to earn or not earn XP, I would presume. Otherwise, I don't see why they've done printed XP on these guys again. So that could be a lot of damage. A lot of damage. Is it as good as the other top attack? Maybe not so much, but the fact that it's got a movement on it kind of might tip it over the edge there. There's a good chance that you could maybe hit 2. And the fact that it's a top means that you can actually use the bottom to play or move the shadow tokens to ensure that you can get the +3 maybe twice. So yeah, I think Black Lance, this is a lot of the time, it's just going to be an attack 10. And that's going to be good. The bottom is move 4 with jump. So that's the first time we've seen jump on this character. Curse, target all enemies moved through with the movability. Okay, it's Black Lance. Black Lance is the pick. This obviously allows you to curse a huge amount. You can use a pair of boots with this as well. So you can extend the ability and go even further. So yeah, I think this is very, very strong. Being able to curse potentially 3 or 4 enemies or even more with a pair of boots. Yeah, you're taking it every day of the week. 16 initiative, and the top is a very strong attack. Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is interesting. This, I think, is counterintuitive to the character. This is interesting and actually pretty good, really. But this has just got some great top action, great bottom action. Easy pick for me. I'm going to be taking Black Lance at level 9. So with perks in general and with the new perk changes, we've seen a complete rebalance of what kind of perks we can expect, and with the changes to the advantage and the rolling modifier rules, this is really kind of changed the way that we see perks, really. And with perks as well that can completely change the way that our character is played, not just from an attack modifier perspective, but actually give us abilities, change lots of different things. So perks are a real point of evolution within the Gloomhaven kind of system with Frosthaven. So this is going to give us lots more different options and lots of things to discuss, and perhaps different ways we want to go depending on the different builds that we have. So for the Deathwalker, we have the standard remove 2 -1 cards, the classic. We've seen that one many times before. We have replace 1 -2 with 1 +0. Again, another one we've seen so many times before in Gloomhaven. We have a replace 1 -1 card with 1 +1 card. Now this is slightly different. You don't see this all the time, but this is again in a similar kind of vein, very much geared around the character improving their damage and trying to get their deck to a really nice spot where you're hopefully drawing plus damage rather than drawing minus damage, right? Also what we've got here is, this is sort of like more of a new style perk we've got here. Replace 1 +0 card with 1 +1 curse card, which is very interesting. You can do this 3 times as well. I think that's pretty strong, actually. That's definitely something that you might consider doing. You've got add 1+2 make dark card. Again, that's just a nice card to chuck in there to do extra damage. You've got add 1 rolling disarm and 1 rolling muddle card. Interesting. Could be quite good. Disarm is obviously very good. I think so far, though, some of these other perks are looking a bit more attractive, but this is, you know, disarm is a great effect, and to have some rolling ones, yeah, why not? You've also got add 2 rolling heal 1 ally cards. This one, I'm not so sure about. I think this is probably the weakest we've seen so far. I don't mind little heals here and there, but to expend a perk point on this when you've got so many good perks that we've already, you know, from a damage perspective come across, I don't really see us going this route, unfortunately, with the Deathwalker. You've got ignore negative scenario effects, the classic. Depends on what scenario effects there are out there, and it completely depends on the distribution and the frequency of these effects before we can really make a judgment. We have whenever you long rest, you may move 1 shadow token up to 3x. So this is huge. So this is what we're really coming to now with perks, and this is perks that do things that are just completely different, right, to what we're expected. We usually don't get anything like this, right? We usually just get stuff to do with our attack modifiers. So this is a new angle for perks, and this is really interesting and I think really useful for this character. Whenever we long rest, we can move 1 shadow token up to 3 hexes. That's an action for us. We take actions, as we've discussed before, to move shadow tokens around. So we get a free action whenever we long rest. Sign me up. So far, this is an instant pick perk for me. It's just going to make your character just work so much easier. And yes, there's going to be certain situations when, wow, you long rest and maybe you can't move it towards an enemy or something like that. But just the process of getting it closer to the next room, the process of getting them adjacent to you, maybe for you to consume them to then make a summon, something like that on a future turn. I think that's really cool. So this, it looks really strong to me. And so far, if I'm picking one perk first, this is the one I'm picking. Next up, we have while we occupy a hex with a shadow token, all attacks targeting you gain disadvantage. Kind of nice. It's a nice little effect, but ultimately I don't think it's really is it worth a perk? Maybe. It's quite a unique effect. If you're going that kind of tanking build, or if you're playing maybe 2-player and so you're going to be forced to take damage a little bit more regularly, maybe you might consider this. But for me, this is a little bit underwhelming, or at least it's not the way that I'm considering building this character, at least. So no, for me, this one's probably a pass. The next one is whenever you short rest, you may consume dark to perform curse range 2 as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow. So whenever we short rest, we can then consume dark to perform a curse range 2 as if we were occupying a hex with a shadow. So basically we can do range 2 from a shadow. Is this good? Is this bad? This is pretty good. However, we do also have lots of ways of consuming dark ourselves. So whenever we do a short rest, there's probably a good chance that we're short resting to get back a card that consumes dark that we're interested in really using. So for me, this feels like if there wasn't the consume dark sort of part of this, yeah, I think this could be really good. However, that consume dark just means that we're taking it away from ourselves to actually use on that turn. You usually short rest in Gloomhaven when you're midway through a room, you really need to get some key cards back. Maybe you've run out of cards, but you're short resting to particularly get some things back that are powerful. And if you've already created dark the previous turn, the chances are you're going to want to short rest, get back a card that really uses that element. So for me, I felt like this is a little bit counterintuitive because of that short rest caveat. If it was a long rest, I absolutely see it, but because it's a short rest, and I imagine it's just because they don't want to give you too much value on just a long rest. Because if both of these things were long rest, I think it's like, you know, good luck team, I'm long resting every single time. I'm never short resting, right? And that might be a bit too much. So in terms of like what I would take perks wise, just looking at it, I think number one, I'm taking this perks right from the get-go. This is really going to help you out, I think, and keep those shadows moving and potentially allow you to summon after your long rest, and you could discard your summon, and then you could move the token next to you, and then you could get that summon back. So even if that summon has died, you just discard it from your active area. Then when you long rest, you get it back, and then you immediately play it and consume that shadow that you've just moved. I think that's really cool. So yeah, I quite like this. I think this is good. In terms of the other ones, removing the 2-1s is always going to be something I'm interested in doing, because it's just improving our deck mathematically. Again, with the -2, same deal. Replacing -1s with +1s, again, same deal. This character does have a lot of the usual suspects, if you like, from Gloomhaven. So although some classes and some perks have changed, and they did not say that they were removing this type of effect entirely from the game, and if the character calls for it and is suited for it, they're still going to be in the game, and I think we can see that here. So this character still has very much those classic perks, and I think you want to approach this like the classic Gloomhaven perk system, very much so, to begin with, removing all of the negative things. But this, I think, is the kind of the interesting one, and potentially the negative scenario effects is the interesting one too. Not much is really known about this mastery section here. I've heard from Gripe Away is the person who actually worked on the perks along with Themris. I heard that this is going to be some kind of like one-off achievement. So once you manage to do this, consume 7 shadows in 1 round, then you have managed to master the shadows, right? And it's going to give you some kind of reward. Last time we heard what this reward was is a set XP reward for your character. So you would just get a set amount of XP, tick it off, and then once it's done, it's done. Whether or not that's going to be true, I don't know. We don't know whether or not that is still the case, and this is still shrouded in mystery a little bit. So we still have to wait on masteries, but you can see here what the kind of things that you would have to do, and you're going to get a reward, be it XP, maybe some more check marks, who knows. But this is what masteries is all about. Well, there you have it. There's my final look at the Deathwalker class using the final cards as released by Isaac. It was great to go back and revisit this and be able to take another look at this character, and I think this character has changed quite a bit. I was very underwhelmed by it initially during the Kickstarter campaign. I felt like it was a bit weak. I thought it was a bit one-dimensional, a bit too solo, a bit too inwardly focused. Didn't think it would play well with some of the other classes. Just thought it didn't have enough things that it was bringing to the party to really help you out, especially if you're planning on playing 2-player. But actually, these cards are all pretty strong, and there were some really difficult decisions when we were going through on what cards to pick at what level up. So this is going to be a really interesting one to play, actually. And I think there's going to be some real good discussion around different builds and which cards you get. Because again, there's multiple times where I really seriously considered going back and taking previous cards, because at certain levels, there's some really strong options for you. So if this is anything to go by for the other characters, then we are definitely got a treat in store, because, you know, gone are the days perhaps when in Gloomhaven it felt like we had these slam dunk picks or one way that we should go with a character. And so far for this character, we've got a lot of difficult decisions, and it's getting a lot more kind of getting a lot more blurry and a bit more of a gray area as to which card is better or what ability is better. And until we get an opportunity to properly play the entire campaign, it's going to be really hard to say. So yeah, super excited. I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, looking forward to doing more of these. As always, guys, you know the drill. If you did enjoy the video, please do consider tossing it a like and subscribing. I also stream regularly on Twitch at twitch.tv/ManagedRequest every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, and we can talk Gloomhaven and Frosthaven till the cows come home over there. So do come hang out and talk some Gloomhaven live with me, and yeah, have a lovely fun time. And with that, I'm off to go start work on another video for another Frosthaven character. Thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, that's the blessing from Cowhead.
Yeah.
That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?